Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today has been on the show before, but this time she has a new book, and the foreword of the book is from none other than the beloved and most respected man in nutrition, probably plant-based nutrition, Dr. T. Colin Campbell. The book is called Heal and Prevent Autism, and it's written by today's guest, Karen Ranzi. Nice to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me back, Chef AJ. I love coming and speaking with you on your show.
Great, thank you. But if you mind holding the book up, because when you held it up before, I was speaking, so they couldn't see you. But you have to talk.
So the book is Heal and Prevent Autism, Natural Solutions That Work. And this is great for anybody who plans to have a child or a family who has a child with autism, or even an older person with autism. I'm very honored that T. Colin Campbell and his son, Daniel, who's a special education teacher, they wrote a 3-page foreword for Heal and Prevent Autism.
That is so great. Congratulations. That's quite a coup. You know, I know you've prepared a little slide presentation for us, but in case people didn't see you on the show before, or your son who was recently on the show, who kind of mirrored your story because he was really what was the reason you changed your diet in the first place. I was wondering if you can please explain what your diet and lifestyle looked like when you were growing up and what inspired you to adopt a raw vegan diet. So what's that journey been like for you, Karen?
I have to say, Chef AJ, that when I was growing up, I was fortunate to have a father who was vegan. The word didn't even exist back then, but my grandmother back in 1921 healed from asthma and emphysema after reading a book about plant food nutrition that came out around 1918.
And there was a book about plant-based nutrition in 1918?
You may have heard of it. It was called the Mucusless Diet Healing System.
I think I have, yes.
Yeah. So that book came out in 1921. My grandmother was sick, and she was really lucky that somebody brought her that book to the hospital. And she decided to follow a plant-based way of living, and she completely healed and lived another 50 years when she was only given a few months because her emphysema was so bad. So I did grow up in a family that had this amazing history of healing, but my mother did not believe that we could get enough protein, isn't that always the reason, without animal protein. And so she raised my sister and I on a mainstream animal-based diet, and I had all the so-called childhood illnesses. As an adolescent, I developed severe cystic acne, and then digestive problems on top of that. I had IBS for many years. And then later, I did go vegetarian when I was pretty young, when I was 17, because my father and my grandmother, they respected every creature. And I watched them carry out spiders in a tissue, whereas I saw my mother killing everything. And that very clear distinction of how we treat other creatures, it really was beautiful for me. And I morally connected with that. And at age 17, I went vegetarian, not realizing the cruelty of dairy and how bad it was for my health. And it wasn't until many, many years later that I really understood the problems with dairy, both ethically and for my health. And in 1989, I went vegan, but we were eating a lot of processed food. And my son, my second child, who was on your show, he lives in Costa Rica now and has Costa Rica plant-based retreats and a fruit farm. And I never would have believed it, but so with his story, he had asthma and chronic ear infections, and I was able to facilitate his healing by bringing him to raw food. And so we did green juicing and fruits and vegetables. And at 3 years old, after 3 years of chronic ear infections and asthma, he healed in about 10 to 11 months. And my like almost 3 decades of cystic acne healed in 3 months. So this dramatic healing got me writing. It started out with my first book, Creating Healthy Children, which has won numerous awards. And T. Colin Campbell also endorsed this book. He's on the back cover. And then a lot of my readers asked for recipes. So I wrote Raw Vegan Recipe Fun for Families, which has 115 easy recipes. And so that's what brought me to where I am today. And I have been a speech pathologist as well as a vegan and raw food health coach. So I've been a speech pathologist for 43 years, working with children ages 3 to 21 with autism for the past 20 years, and also a holistic health coach. And I didn't like what I was seeing in the schools, the drugging of the children, the feeding of chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese. And I did not see the progress that I wanted to see. And then I did start working with families who were interested in health coaching and came to me with their kids with autism. And I was so impressed with the progress that I was seeing that I had to write this third book. And that's
great.
where I am today.
Nice.
It came out a few weeks ago.
Well, congratulations. I'll post the link in both the chat and the show notes if people want to check it out. Congratulations on getting T. Colin Campbell to write the foreword. You know, you mentioned taking out spiders with a tissue. There's an easier, safer way now. There's this device, and we have 2 of them, called a Bugzooka, and it just gently sucks them in, and then you can drive them somewhere else and release them.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, it's great because I can't kill anything either. I'm afraid of spiders, but I still won't kill them. So that's kind of cool. So I love that.
That's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe you say this in your slideshow presentation, but do you define what autism is? Because a lot of times you hear it's a spectrum.
I want to say that each and every single person with autism is extremely unique. I have never seen 2 that have exactly the same symptoms. And some of their symptoms are, you know, some of the things about people with autism are absolutely wonderful. You know, you hear that some of these people are absolutely brilliant in math or in music, or they have these amazing memories. So there's lots of great things that come along with autism. However, I have worked with many children who are not able to communicate. And because of their strong frustrations that come as a result of not having any speech and not being able to express themselves, they have these behaviors that keep a lot of these parents inside their homes and not being able to go anywhere with these kids. So it's a disorder that comes along with speech issues, language, receptive and expressive language problems, communication and engagement problems, and that brings along behavior issues.
Yeah. A lot of times people tell me when their kids have autism or on the spectrum of autism that they're real specific about what they'll eat and that they won't eat healthy food. They'll only eat what they'll eat.
Yes, that happens quite frequently. And I have worked with many families with kids with very finicky eaters. And even in the school system, you know, a lot of the therapists and the teachers told me, you know, we're sorry, but you're not going to be able to make your fruit salads with the kids. They're not going to have a green smoothie. And I did it anyway. And sometimes the kids were not receptive. But I'll tell you that over time, constantly presenting healthy food and making an activity out of it, not having it as a reinforcer, like, every time the kids would have an issue, reinforcing with M&Ms and potato chips. Like, I don't want to do that. I am happy to do an activity around making a green smoothie or preparing a salad or a fruit salad, or just doing sensory integration issues around one fruit. Like, there was one girl who ate no fruits and vegetables. She just lived on refined chocolate pudding. And her mother was really concerned. And the teacher had actually contacted me to work with this child on this specific issue, because I had taken a number of courses within speech therapy focused on feeding therapy. And I was able to desensitize this girl by focusing on the sensory issue of the fact that she didn't like the texture of any of these foods. And so what we did was we brought these different foods into her environment. Whenever I was working with her, I would do an activity, for example, around strawberries. We would start with organic strawberries, and we would do an art activity with them. Then we might just do smelling of the strawberry. We might do having her watch me eating strawberries without any coercion for her to eat. And over time, she got to know the strawberry. And then I started to puree a little bit of strawberry, and I started to add it to her chocolate pudding. And over time, she didn't notice the difference as I continued to add more. And then there was so much strawberry syrup in the chocolate pudding that she didn't notice. And she started to develop the taste for these strawberries. And then I was eating a strawberry one time, and she asked to smell it, and she licked it, and she actually took a bite of a strawberry.
Wow.
Sometimes it's a slow process. With some children, it goes much more quickly, depending on what the parents are eating. Parents have to be the model.
Well, if all she would eat was chocolate pudding, could you have made a chocolate pudding out of dates and avocado? Would she have known, you think?
I tried that. Didn't work. Yeah. So at that time, I had to add to what she was already eating. With some kids, it's not as strong an eating issue as what she had. With some kids, they're eating other things that I might be able to mix in, like one child liked maple syrup. So I was able to add a little bit of maple syrup to his fruit or veggies to get him to eat those.
Wow.
So I look at each child and what they're already eating.
Wow. Must be difficult though.
Sometimes, yes. And sometimes when I have the support of the parents, like when parents come to me privately and I have their support, like there was one couple, a husband and a wife, where they were both involved. They both wanted so badly for their child to make progress that they were willing to do whatever it took. And when I had the support of both parents, we saw some pretty impressive changes.
That's great.
Yeah.
It was somebody with that kind of eating, sensory issues. Like, I mean, because people have said, like, people that don't have autism, like a kid will never starve himself, but somebody with autism, they might, right? When they don't want to eat, they just won't eat.
When they don't want to eat, they won't eat. I haven't personally seen any, like I have had a couple of parents who just said, I'm getting all the stuff out of my house. I'm just doing it all at once. And I was like, well, I don't know if you should just do a 360-degree turn, but I actually have had some parents who insisted that they were going to do that. And the child was really upset for 2 weeks and didn't eat very much, ate a little bit, maybe banana ice cream, because you can make that really tasty, and put some carob powder in to make it chocolatey, and some dates, and kids might like that. But they were willing to go through that and see what happened. And with these two boys, they did switch. They did make the switch, and they did have a lot of healing from their autism symptoms.
That's great.
Yeah, some people may not believe it, but that's why I recommend reading the book.
Imagine if kids started out eating this way.
Yes, exactly. And I do have a presentation.
Great. Well, please share your slides. I love presentations. I don't know about the audience.
Great.
But
It is about a half an hour.
Thank you.
And I hope everybody enjoys it. I do have some information in there, but what I tried to do is to make it more about stories, so people connect to stories. And so I do have some important information, but I added a lot of stories so that you get to see some of the power of what a plant-based lifestyle can do for these kids.
Great.
Chef AJ, can you see it clearly?
I can see it perfectly.
Okay, wonderful. So there I am on the right, preparing raw food dishes at Whole Foods when I just came out with my book, Creating Healthy Children, which is on the bottom left, Creating Healthy Children Through Attachment Parenting and Raw Foods. And then you see my recipe book above that at called Raw Vegan Recipe Fun for Families, 115 really easy recipes for families, for anybody, to live on a daily basis with an abundance of raw food. And then just a few weeks ago, I published Heal and Prevent Autism, Natural Solutions That Work. And there you can see T. Colin Campbell, PhD, and Daniel Campbell, MED, are writing the foreword for the book. And my topic today is improving your mental and neurological health. And that is across the board, with reversing brain fog, attention deficit disorder, autism, and even later, Alzheimer's. And I always like to start with this food graph. You can see here the United States food consumption chart as a percentage of calories. And if you look at this chart, you'll see, and this is not only in the US, this is an all westernized society. And that's why you'll be able to tell from this chart that worldwide we have poor health, because 63% of what is being eaten is processed, packaged, refined foods with added fats and oils, sugars, and refined grains. And 25% of what most people eat is animal food. And animal food is high in saturated fat and cholesterol. It is the only food that has cholesterol. And it also has no fiber for proper digestion. And the 63% processed food has little to no fiber for proper digestion. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. But that 12% of plant food, vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts and seeds, whole grains, that 12% has fiber, but actually half of that 12% is processed plant food, like almonds in candy bars, or spinach in frozen spinach souffle. And so only half of that 12%, about 6%, is whole plant food. And then again, only half of that whole plant food is actually eaten fresh whole plant foods. So we have a very small amount of raw living food in there. And neurological challenges are often linked to what goes in the body. So the brain fog and the learning disability, the attention deficit, hyperactivity, autism, and Alzheimer's can often be attributed to gut health. These are important statistics. 40 years ago, when I started as a speech and language pathologist, autism was 1 in 10,000. Today, in my state of New Jersey, autism is now 1 in 32. And it is expected that by 2032, autism will be 1 in 2 children. So this is an alarming epidemic. It is not something to take lightly, and we all need to pay attention to this, whether you have a child with autism or not, and especially if you are ever planning to have a child. I want to touch on the gut-brain connection. The gut and the brain are 2 branches of the nervous system that communicate not only with each other, but with the entire immune system. So what goes into the gut affects the rest of the body, every single organ, including the brain. And damage to the gut and the immune system is going to affect brain function. Dr. Michael Greger, who I know you've had on this show before, who wrote How Not to Die, he says there are huge benefits of keeping fiber in our food for the health of the microbiome and the brain. Fiber acts like a vacuum and is constantly cleaning the digestive tract, and it creates good, healthy bacteria in the gut. And if we start a healthy lifestyle from the very beginning, we have a great opportunity to avoid neurological issues. There have been pregnancy studies describing early feeding patterns, which have an influence on early sensory experiences and on the development of healthy eating patterns. Even back in December of 2007, there was an article in the Journal of Pediatrics about women who were pregnant eating an abundance of fruits and vegetables, and how the taste of those fruits and vegetables went into the amniotic fluid. And that fetus ends up turning into a child who loves fruits and vegetables for the rest of his or her life. There was a similar article in the Journal of Public Health Nursing in around 2009 that talked about women who breastfeed eating an abundance of fruits and vegetables. And while they're breastfeeding, that taste goes into the breast milk, and that child will show healthy eating patterns. There's something else that's extremely important that I talk about a lot in the book, Heal and Prevent Autism, and that is skin-to-skin contact especially with the baby after the baby is born. But this skin-to-skin contact is important for every age. So even if someone has a child with autism, they need to start practicing skin-to-skin contact. Skin-to-skin contact has been shown in research to improve social and emotional intelligence. And what it is that after a baby is born and the baby nurses, breastfeeds, then the baby should be placed against the mother's skin. The baby has been with the mother for these 9 months, and the baby has felt her breathing and knows her heartbeat. So the baby needs to be put against the mother's skin, where the baby connects with her on that very, very warm part of the mother. And that skin-to-skin contact reduces cortisol, the stress hormone, and increases oxytocin, the love hormone. And isn't that what we want for our children? Oxytocin, the love hormone. And long-term research is showing that these children feel right in the world. They become alert much sooner than other children. And so it's important for all ages to have the skin-to-skin contact, especially if there wasn't enough skin-to-skin early on. Those first hours, days, weeks, even months after a child is born. And it also goes along with human milk. Human milk is perfectly fitted for the human baby. It's got the perfect fat, the perfect protein, and the right bacteria for the development of a healthy gut and brain. And here in this picture is one of my past clients, and she used to come to my Raw Food Fund for Kids program. And you can see here, she is practicing attachment parenting principles through skin-to-skin contact. This is my family. This is me with my kids. I wish I had a better one with my husband in it, but this was the one I found. So this is me with my kids. My daughter is now 33 and practicing skin-to-skin and attachment parenting herself with her daughter. And my son Marco has been here on Chef AJ's show, and he's now 31. And I did talk a bit about Marco's healing from asthma and chronic ear infections the first 3 years of his life by going whole plant vegan and to raw food. And it was an amazing healing. And those illnesses are autoimmune. It's an autoimmune condition. And by changing the diet and the lifestyle, we were able to heal him. And it's also a risk factor for autism, respiratory issues, and ear infections. 80% of children with an autism spectrum diagnosis have a history of a traumatic birth. And a traumatic birth can affect the brain, the spinal column, and even the fluids in these organs. And so I prescribe a natural treatment modality, all of these different modalities. Raw vegan nutrition has been very effective. Cranial sacral therapy, where the brain tissue is massaged by a cranial sacral therapist, and it increases blood flow in the brain. Massage is also extremely important. These kids need the skin-to-skin contact, and massage is a wonderful therapy for these kids. Foods that cause inflammation can be very problematic if women are eating these foods during pregnancy or later feeding their kids these foods. Processed foods, packaged stuff, a lot of it is loaded with MSG, monosodium glutamate, which is an excitotoxin and excites the nervous system. So we want to stay away from all that processed stuff. Organ meats, hydrogenated oils, fried foods, processed meats, which are also now known to cause mold in the body. High fructose corn syrup is being directly linked with autism. So all these foods that you see here in the picture can contribute, and also processed food, which often contains high fructose corn syrup as one of the earlier ingredients. And so what are critical nutrients for the brain? Well, omega-3 fatty acids, which are abundant in fruits and vegetables. If you have a good balance of fruits and vegetables, especially leafy greens, they will have a good omega-3 to 6 ratio and help with regulation of the immune system. And they're very important in creating certain structures in the brain. Blueberries, and any researcher who's looking at the brain, and I've especially heard this from researchers who look at Alzheimer's disease, that blueberries are so important as brain nourishing foods. But all berries have benefits. And of course, those wonderful leafy green vegetables get rid of free radical byproducts on a daily basis. So they are detoxifying foods. And here in the picture, I have my chia seed pudding loaded with blueberries. This is a wonderful story. I didn't have a picture of this family, but I worked directly with the father, who was extremely motivated to turn around the symptoms for his 4.5-year-old son. And he wanted to start with a plant-based diet, and he wanted to go high raw to see if it could have an effect. So I worked with this family for close to a year, and I was really impressed with their motivation to go like 90 to 95% raw. And these are some of the pointers that this man, Noel, pointed out to me that were happening with his son. Much more energy to run and play and climb. His constipation was fully resolved, and nothing they had done had resolved the constipation. They were previously on a ketogenic, high animal food diet, and that made the constipation so much worse. And this was one of the first signs of healing that they saw, and that many families see in their children, is the digestive healing. And that goes along with the gut healing that ends up having results for the other areas of the body, including the brain. He also saw more language, both receptive and expressive, more connection and engagement with the world. Even the insect bites on his skin seemed to heal much faster, and much less allergy. And Noel says that they love this diet. They're going to continue tweaking it. They've added green juices and like what they're seeing with reducing the symptoms. And then here he's thanking me for my guidance and continued support, and also my valuable experience in raising vegan and raw kids. And these are some of the important risk factors for autism. There are many, but I did want to talk about some of the important ones. Premature or traumatic birth, a mother with toxic exposures. And I want to say here that especially the mercury in fish, I have seen with those who I've worked with. Digestive and skin problems, ear, sinus, and strep infections. So here's where my son's ear infections come in. Very serious, painful, chronic ear infections. Respiratory problems. My son also had severe asthma. Repeated use of antibiotics is a risk factor for autism. History of strong immunization reactions. My daughter had strong immunization reactions. Exposure to toxins by use of chemicals, for example, plastics and other chemicals, can be a risk factor for autism. And today we are exposed to so many chemicals in our environment, more than ever. And now I want to turn to heavy metals. I did speak about them briefly in the previous slide about fish, but I want to point out other heavy metals that increase the toxic load. Amalgam fillings, methylmercury in fish, arsenic fed to chicken these days to make the chicken look more pink. And that mercury poisoning is one of the major causes of autism that we are finding in research. And mine is not the only book that brings up that important topic. Now, we often think that salmon is one of the healthier fish. However, salmon is a large fish, and the big fish contain more mercury than the smaller fish, and the bigger fish eat all the smaller fish. So it contains its mercury and their mercury, and smaller fish also contain plastics. So we're bringing in a lot of heavy metals and chemicals. Heavy metal poisoning affects cognition and mood and equals brain fog, attention deficit, and autism. And sulfur binds heavy metals. So we need to have sulfur-rich food in our diet. And one example of sulfur-rich foods are cruciferous vegetables. There was a study called the Seychelles Child Development Study that looked at neurodevelopmental outcomes in children following in utero exposure to methylmercury from a maternal fish diet. And the higher levels of mercury found in mothers who eat more fish have been associated with birth defects, seizures, mental retardation, developmental disabilities, and autism. This is only one of two studies. I'm not going into a lot of studies here. The purpose of my presentation is to give you some information, but also to show you the profound effects when this information is applied, when the health information is applied. But I did want to show you one of the most important studies that I did find. And this is the fruit turkey that was made at my Thanksgiving celebration. Every year on the weekend after Thanksgiving, I host in New Jersey my Thanksgiving celebration at a time when millions of turkeys are being slaughtered. We celebrate the life of the turkey. And we have a gratitude circle, and we bring our best plant food, our recipes and our fruits and veggies, and we have an amazing time. But I do want to talk now about this study, harnessing the power of microbiome assessment tools as part of neuroprotective nutrition and lifestyle medicine interventions, which is in the research journal called Microorganisms. And what they're pointing out here is that high fruit and vegetable intakes as factors contributing to improved cognitive function, as well as to a reduced risk of developing neurodegenerative processes. And again, they're talking about both polyphenols in fruits and veggies and fiber, the important fiber that acts as prebiotic molecules that will be processed by the gut microbiome. And I was thrilled to find this wonderful research. Another heavy metal that I want to mention is aluminum. Aluminum interferes with the normal neurosequencing of brain development. Even wrapping something in aluminum foil can cause aluminum to be taken into the body and to affect the brain. And cheese today, there are companies who produce cheese, and I'm not talking about vegan cheese, I'm talking about animal-based cheese, that make the cheese slice easier and make it creamier. They are putting in aluminum into the cheese. And it does affect this neurosequencing, muscular development, speech development, cognitive development, and emotional development. And how can whole plant-based nutrition help? Whole plant foods are healthy protein sources. Even something like spinach, a wonderful high mineral leafy green, contains plenty of protein. By calorie, spinach contains about 49% protein. Beans are very high in protein. We do not need animal food for protein. Animal food is difficult for the liver and the kidneys to process. And the protein of those foods also causes somewhere around 70% of the calcium to be washed out. So we want to look for the plant-based protein. Also, plant foods are rich with water, especially those that are raw plant foods. They are water rich, and whole plant foods are rich with that important fiber to build up the gut microbiome. And they are also nutrient dense, loaded with vitamins and minerals and protein and all the antioxidants that we could ever want. And this is the one other study that I wanted to mention on why raw plant food. You want to have an abundance of raw plant food. And this is one of my classes. I do a 5-week raw food coaching and recipe course, and I make delicious salads and dressings. So I thought these were colorful pictures to put in here. But the study I'm mentioning is a 2018 study published in the journal Frontiers in Psychology. And it found that people who consumed more produce in its natural, uncooked state reported higher levels of psychological well-being compared to those who ate mainly cooked alternatives. So it's a really good thing to add more raw plant foods from wherever you are in your journey. This was a family of clients of mine, and they're from Greece, Yota, Dimitris, and Electra. And I worked with them, I would say about 1.5 years ago. And the father came to me online and asked me if I would coach with them. And this is what happened after we coached for several months. At a most difficult time, fortunately, we met Karen. She helped with our 2.5-year-old daughter with autism. We changed her diet to raw vegan, and step by step, our little girl made major progress in her communication, speech, and behavior. She's happier and healthier than ever, and we are too. I'm not going to read this testimonial, it's quite long, but this is from a family in Australia with not only 1, but 2 boys with autism. And they both had receptive and expressive language problems and global developmental delay and learning difficulties. They already had some severe aggressive behaviors, and the whole family is thrilled that these 2 boys have completely turned around their symptoms of autism. This is a child who the parents came to me from New Delhi, India. And he had already, at 3 years old, had 3 colostomies and autism. So when we talk about gut health, many of these children have gastrointestinal problems. Many of them have constipation, bloating, reflux, all kinds of gut health issues. And this child already had 3 parts of his colon removed when I met him. And I worked with the family for quite a long period of time. And we also talked about sunshine because his vitamin D3 level was extremely low. And these parents were willing to do anything they possibly could. So they moved out of New Delhi, out of the city, and they moved to southern India where the boy could get sunshine. And his vitamin D3 level went right up. And with a raw vegan diet and this D3 from sunshine and some other lifestyle factors, this boy completely turned around from his symptoms of autism, and his gut became a healthy gut for a growing child. And at 5 years old, he was completely healed. Diseases and disorders can often be linked to digestive problems. So we need to look at the foods we eat and whether they will nourish us or become an anti-nutrient. So each food that you put in your mouth, is it a whole plant food? And will it nourish you? We need to maximize our nutrition, and we need to minimize as much as we possibly can our toxic chemical load. This is a very short 1.5 minute testimonial from one of my clients. I worked with her and her husband, and they were very motivated. And I gave them the support that they needed for close to half a year.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maria Victoria, and I'm a mother of 3. And we initially signed up with Karen because we have a child that is on the spectrum. He has an all-around developmental delay. His name is Skyrin, and he has made such great improvements since we have been working with Karen. He is eating a lot of different fruits and vegetables now. One in particular that is really great is celery, and he has a green juice every day, and his speech has gotten so much better. We can definitely see him opening up and making like so much more eye contact, where before it was very little to sometimes none. He's definitely calmer, and we are just really thrilled to have Karen as someone that we can work with and turn to, because she has helped us not only in that specific area of helping us with our child, but also with our whole family. We are all a whole foods, plant-based family, and we just feel really amazing, and we have so much energy. And she's actually helped us also with our marriage, not in a specific way, but just helping us see more on the same page. And it's been a beautiful thing that I'm so grateful for. Thank you so much, Karen. We love you so much, and it's so great to have you in our lives, and such an honor to call you our health coach and also our dear friend.
And this is what individuals and families are saying after they switch to a whole food diet and lifestyle, adding in also an abundance of the raw fruits and vegetables. Increased energy, increased physical stamina, resistance to illness, and all of these symptoms that you usually see with autism start to improve. And of course, the younger the child, the greater the expectancy of improvement. But I'm really optimistic for all ages in changing the diet and the lifestyle to increase attention span, improve memory, increase speech, cognition, and communication, and improve behavior. And a lot of it starts with improved digestion. And it also affects sleep. So many of these people are not sleeping, and they start to sleep better. And I want to end by giving you some tips for healthy living. Green smoothies, a lot of times kids don't eat large salads, and some kids who are transitioning to healthier eating may have an aversion to green vegetables. So you may want to try green smoothies. And starting your own garden, or buying from a local organic farmer to get even more nutrition in your food. Preparing healthy food together as a family is key. When you get your child involved, they are more likely to eat the food. And I think that's why I was successful even in the schools. When I went into the schools and some of the teachers told me that bringing in fruits and vegetables wasn't going to work, and I persisted with it, but I had the kids preparing the food with me, that's what worked. So getting your kids involved in the kitchen, spending time outdoors in nature, having them connecting with nature also can help them connect with nature's foods. And the last tip I have here is keeping fruit and veggie baskets and bowls around your kitchen for quick, available snacks. So I have way more tips in my books, and these are just a sampling of some of the tips that I think can be very helpful. And here I have ways that you can be in touch with me. And I do have a free gift for you if you're interested. It's a fun raw food, finger food recipe book, just to prepare something very easy, very, very simple. And there's 11 recipes on that simple recipe ebook. And I put the link here for it. My websites are feelfabulouswithfood.com and also superhealthychildren.com. At feelfabulouswithfood.com, I have a course that's been running since 2015, where I teach people who want to become health coaches. I have my vegan certification course to become a vegan and raw food coach. And at superhealthychildren.com, I have a full blog of articles. I have recipes, my recipe books. I have more than the one book. And I also have Creating Healthy Children and the autism book, Heal and Prevent Autism, at superhealthychildren.com on the products page. And you can also follow me on YouTube at Super Healthy Children, or you can put in Feel Fabulous with Food at YouTube. Either one of those will come up. And actually, there should not be a .com after Super Healthy Children. And I also have a free training on how to become a health coach in the vegan and raw food niche. And that's at bit.ly/Karen class. And then I have my phone number and emails for anyone who has any questions about my presentation, what I talked about today, and in turning around neurological problems and improving mental health for everybody, including people with autism.
That's a great picture of you, Karen.
Thank you. That's at the annual Woodstock Fruit Festival.
How many years have you been raw?
I have been a raw vegan. So let me stop sharing this now so we can talk.
Yeah, you're fine. You're big now.
So I have been a vegan for 32 years. I should start out, I've been vegetarian for 50 years. That's since I'm 17. And vegan since 1989. And raw vegan since 1994, since my son's healing from asthma and ear infections, and keep on going strong with it. I don't see any going back. I feel like once you've connected ethically with a vegan lifestyle, that you're not, even if you do have a health challenge, you're not going to go to animal foods. You're going to look for a reason within the plant community.
Right. Yeah, I'm so impressed by people that can be raw. Like, you know what I wonder is like people that are vegan, like they sometimes look at people that aren't, like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you vegan? Or people that are healthy vegan look at junk food vegans side of like, why can't you eat healthy vegan? I'm wondering, do raw folks look at cooked vegans like, what's wrong with these people? Why don't they all eat raw?
No, I don't. I don't because first of all, I do look at whole foods plant vegan as still being very healthy. And most of the people who come to me, they don't want to go 100% raw. So I take people from where they are on whatever path they are, and I create a meal plan where I'm bringing in more raw food. I'm not trying to get them to go 100% raw.
Nice.
So I
That's
just take
great.
them from where they are. And I think, and that's right away, they already start making progress and they end up loving it. So, and it's so easy to do that. So easy. But whole plant foods is certainly first and foremost the goal.
Nice, great. Lisa, who's watching live, says, do you have any studies on helping people with ADHD or bipolar?
Yes. There have been studies on that. And I actually know a woman who I hosted here in New Jersey. Her name is Susie Hosius, and she wrote a book called Natural Healing of Bipolar and Depression.
Interesting.
Yeah, and she actually healed by going to raw food.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a healing situation, I would think that would be the best. That's what I used when I had my precancerous polyps, but I couldn't sustain it more than a couple of years. But I always think maybe I'll try again. But
Yeah. But just eating, lots of nice raw food dishes. And
well, I have. I mean, I eat a lot of fruit and I eat a lot of salad.
I'm
not real big on smoothies because I'm always cold, and I don't think they have hot smoothies in the raw food world. But I do. I try to eat as much fruit and salad as I possibly can. I have TMJ, and it's like I cannot wait for the day that I can eat a carrot again. You know what I mean? Hopefully, I'll get some help with that. So, what made you decide to write a book about autism and healing and preventing neurological issues?
That really came from my experiences in the schools. I just felt that after 20 years of watching the chicken nuggets and all the things that kids were eating that seemed to be making them numb, I wanted to write a book about natural plant-based solutions. It was in my heart for a long time, and I didn't do it. And the book has been in the process for the last 5 to 6 years. And it was a lot of research. It really is a research book, and I think that's why T. Colin Campbell really connected with it. If it was just a recipe book for autism, like some of the publishers I went to wanted to make it into, I'm not sure I would have gotten a forward from T. Colin Campbell.
Yeah. He loves the science.
It includes both. It includes the research, and it also includes lots of stories, healing stories, and how-tos, and it has a huge recipe section.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think you're going to come back in the fall and do some of the recipes from the book.
Definitely.
Yep.
Definitely.
Dr. Daryl, who's watching live, says, is there any evidence that eating sprouts would benefit autism spectrum?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have a video on YouTube that I just put out recently. You have to go and watch that YouTube. It's called, Why Are We Not Eating This Amazing Brain Food? It's on YouTube, and it's all about sprouting. And there's one particular sprout that contains a compound called sulforaphane, which is excellent for brain health and wonderful for people with autism.
Nice.
So I'm not going to tell you what it is. You have to go see the video.
Okay, maybe I can, if you give me the link, I can link to it in the show notes. Is autism considered by the medical community primarily a genetic condition, or are they just getting better at diagnosing it now?
It's long been called a genetic condition, but I read the statistics. This can no longer be I used to think it was a genetic disposition. I'm an educator. I came from from a speech pathology background. But as my years of health coaching continued, and I've been coaching in health and nutrition since 1998, I started looking more carefully at the genetic part of it. And could that be possible? And there's just more research coming out on epigenetics and the causes. Between the food exposure, the toxic food exposure, the chemicals in our environment, even the chemicals in our own homes that we don't realize that we're exposing our kids to. And so all of this can, it's just way too high. I mean, in my state of New Jersey, 1 in 32, and they're expecting it to go higher. There's no way that this can just be genetic.
Well, why is toxic load so important to understand?
Toxic load is crucial because of the chemicals that were not in existence before, like things like plastics, even taking drugs like Tylenol is exposing all of us to a lot of toxicity. And the heavy metals, the mercury and aluminum in particular, but there's other heavy metals that we are exposed to. Even being on the computer all the time, the cadmium from the computer. And I am on the computer a lot. So I definitely, once I started reading more and more research on this, I started to take lots of breaks. I take lots of breaks. I go outdoors, get lots of nature in. And connecting to nature is huge for people with any kind of brain issues. I worked recently with a woman with Parkinson's, and she has severe neurological issues. And getting in a lot of healthy raw food and being out in nature and getting sunshine is critical, absolutely critical. And we don't realize how something so simple can make such a big difference, but it does.
Yeah, I would imagine. Absolutely. So heavy metals, do they play a role in disease in general and autism in particular?
Absolutely. Especially the heavy metals. And I've read some research showing that by the age of around 18, that if those heavy metals have not been removed to some extent. I mean, we all have some heavy metals, but very often people with autism are not able to expel them. So even in hair analysis, it has been shown that people with autism, they do not excrete the mercury, the aluminum. It's not in the hair follicle like the child with autism, maybe their siblings are given the same test and it comes out and is revealed in the hair. So it's something that really needs to be looked at, because over the years, if there is so much mercury and aluminum in the body, it can get lodged in the middle section of the brain between the left and the right hemispheres. And once the child is around 18 or a little older, I think it's a bit different for each person, the left and the right hemispheres start to close. And those heavy metals can get blocked in there. And so that's why the younger the person, the better the prognosis of turning around the symptoms. But I have seen some wonderful stories even of people who are older make significant changes. When I speak at the Woodstock Fruit Festival, there's a young woman, she was 24 a couple years ago, and she somehow ended up in one of my classes at the festival. And she was sitting there not knowing how she got into the class, and ended up giving me her email, and ended up being on my newsletter, and was starting to get some of the information that I sent out. And she wrote me a letter, which I've included in Heal and Prevent Autism, focusing on what happened to her. and how people didn't understand her growing up. She was on a lot of psychotropic drugs, and she started to research. She was a very, very smart girl. And that's why I'm saying people with autism are brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. And this girl started doing all this research. And what did she found? She found whole plant foods and raw foods. And she started doing it herself in her 20s and saw a lot of changes. And she herself was able to decrease her drugs and get off of all the drugs. And in the last festival, she and I did a class together. We did an autism Q&A, and the people who were there got to ask her questions about exactly what happened. So that was a wonderful story of someone older who is making all this progress. So I'm very optimistic.
Nice. Sherry, who's watching live, says, what do you think about lawsuits against vaccine manufacturers where parents believe they caused the autism in their children?
Yeah, I mean, I am not an expert in vaccines by any means, but I really do believe that health comes from eating healthy and taking care of the immune system. And we need to look at what we're putting in the body. We don't want to put in toxic ingredients. So whatever you're taking into your body, you need to look at it. Does it have a lot of chemicals? Does it have MSG? Does it have antibiotics? Does it have heavy metals? And if it does, you don't want to bring it in.
Great. Thank you. How important is it to work on gut health for children with autism?
It is crucial to focus on gut health. And as I said in the presentation, that's some of the first healing signs that the families I've worked with have seen, that the constipation is gone. There's no more bloating, the reflux, even esophagitis. I mean, there's so many things that can be connected with the gut. And once the food is building up that good bacteria in the gut and that fiber coming in, things start to happen. And once that gut health improves, and it's different for each person, it may take time, but once that person starts to have improved digestion, everything else starts to move in place so that the other organs start to heal. And there is a very strong connection, and I have felt this way for decades, that there is a strong connection between the gut and the brain.
Yep, that's what the whole GI Health Summit is about, that bidirectional highway of the gut and the brain. Do you think it's important to always choose organic produce?
I think it's important today, and I'm not saying that organic is always perfect, because there are now large companies that used to just be conventional companies, and they have organic. It's better than their conventional, but it's not perfect. However, glyphosate, which is Roundup, is being sprayed on conventional crops. And the GMO foods are a result of the glyphosate sprays that are being used. And if we don't eat organic, and I always recommend going to a local farmer or having your own garden if you're in a place where you can do that. But even if you can only do that in the warmer months, then as much as you can to have your own food. And that's why my son's in Costa Rica. He wants to become completely sustainable. That's his goal. And the best that we can do for ourselves is to eat organically. And sometimes I go to farmers who I know them well. I speak with them. They may not be organic, but they tell me that they really are organic. They just don't have the certification because they can't afford it. And so I have trusted some of those farmers who I do know well, and I do speak with them, and I do trust them. So, when you have fruits and vegetables that are being shipped, I do believe that with the majority of them, you want to have organic. There are some that may not be on the glyphosate list, but on the whole, I think having organic as much as possible.
Yep. And then do you agree with like the clean 15 and dirty dozen is the,
Yes.
doing the best you can with
Absolutely.
that information? Nice. So what steps can a parent take if they're about to have children?
If they're about to have children, they can prepare for a natural childbirth. They can prepare for breastfeeding. And I always recommend looking into midwives to work with. There are some doctors who do really want to have natural births for their patients, but many do not, unfortunately. So I do recommend going to a midwife, and not all midwives will be focused on that, but that will be helpful. And also eating a healthy whole plant lifestyle. And I recommend being there even before being pregnant, and with an abundance of raw food as well. And I do classes on these topics, and anybody who is interested in finding out about my classes, they can get in touch with me through my websites, feelfabulouswithfood.com and superhealthychildren.com.
Great, thank you. There's a couple more questions I'm seeing now in the chat. Bullion says, do you see an observed correlation between GMOs and increased cases of autism?
They are out there, and I have spoken to some parents who have totally changed their diet and believe that because of the way that they ate, the conventional food that they ate, they believe that they contributed to the autism. That is their personal belief. And I really listen carefully to my parents because they have very strong intuitions. Numerous women have told me that they definitely feel that they're high fish eating during pregnancy because they felt that they needed the essential fatty acids from fish. They didn't realize that there are many other sources of essential fatty acids in the plant diet, that we don't need to get it from fish, and we do not want that mercury, and especially during pregnancy.
I mean, you would think if something isn't safe to eat during pregnancy, or it's probably not safe to eat. That's kind of how I look at it, I mean, why would, alcohol, well, just don't drink it when you're pregnant. How about just don't drink it?
That's right.
I mean, this is what I don't understand. But anyway, I'm not in charge. So there's a question, what do you drink, if anything, besides water? And what is the rule on hot tea? I don't think there's like a rule, but but I'll let Karen.
I tend not to recommend caffeinated beverages. I do believe that caffeine is very acidic, and coffee can be very acidic. So I do not recommend that. And I don't recommend alcohol either.
Yeah, that's always never a popular position when you're not recommending alcohol, I've learned,
But, again, I guess it's where somebody is in their journey and moving in the direction you want to go. So it's not about making that 360-degree turn if you're not ready to do it. Because I have also seen people try to do like a 100% raw vegan diet, and they get into trouble. They start binging. And then they're like lying to themselves. They're like telling people that they're raw vegan when they're really not, just because they really want that. It's better, and I also think that if somebody is eating a huge volume of nuts and seeds, it's actually better to have a steamed sweet potato and a salad than to have all those nuts, because I've seen that too. So I've seen people eating this super high fat diet, and that's not healthy either.
Yeah, I just saw a comment from Nina, says, hi from New York. I work on a school bus with mostly male autistic kids. So sad. I would try changing their diet if I was their parent. You never know.
The first step is that they need to get educated if they're willing. And some people are not ready, are not willing, but just sometimes it can be that first person who opens up the mind by suggesting something as small as a book. Check out this book. It may have some real meaning for you. And something like my book, Heal and Prevent Autism, may be that learning that that family needed to make, and suddenly they're a little bit more open. They may not be fully motivated to make all the changes, but they may be a little bit more open. It's the same thing with kids who are already following a mainstream diet. I don't recommend for parents to force them to go vegan or vegan and raw. I don't recommend that. What I recommend is for parents to get these wonderful vegan and raw food books for kids and to educate them that way, to start reading all these wonderful, colorful books. There are so many out there.
Yeah. Let's see. I saw a question from, where'd it go? Jeffrey asks, do you think raw is the route to go for best overall results and our health with whole food plant-based way of eating? I wonder, as I am considering going this route in the near future. I think it depends who you ask, because Dr. McDougall would tell you no, but Dr. Graham would tell you yes. So we'll see what Karen has to say.
That's right. And I've been a friend and colleague of Dr. Graham for many years. And when I was raising my kids, I spoke with him frequently, and I've hosted events with him. But I also follow a lot of the whole foods plant-based. Like, I absolutely love T. Colin Campbell, and I've been following his work for many years. You know, my favorite book is The China Study. So, you know, and like I said, I am first and foremost a whole foods plant eater. And like I said as well, I have seen some people who sabotage their desire to go to a raw vegan diet, and it would sometimes be better for them to stay with a high raw diet if they want to add raw, but have some whole cooked foods in there as well. The healthy, whole plant cooked foods.
Well, you know, today I did an all day up until, that's why the show was so late, women's empowerment virtual summit. And one of the guests was Dr. Ruth Heydrichs, who's like nearing 90 and has won tons of medals and marathons. And she's not all raw. She eats sweet potatoes, but she's high raw.
I know her well. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's a great example of that. Eating a lot of raw food is wonderful for your health.
And your skin.
Yeah. And those studies that I pointed out, they're proving it. So we do have the research to show this.
Yep. I bet I know the answer to this. I think it's probably no, except for maybe apple cider. Do you eat vinegar?
I don't eat vinegar, and you're right, Chef AJ. Occasionally apple cider vinegar. I do occasionally eat something like a dressing that has apple cider vinegar, but most of my dressings are with lemon or lime, and I make some amazing dressings.
Nice. I just use California balsam. Like, well, Monday maybe I'll try it again. You never know. I keep saying we're going to do like a high raw or raw food challenge on the show, but I want to do it in the summer, you know, because there are people that live in Canada, and I think ideally it would be in a warmer time to do this challenge than in
definitely the best time to start something like that would be in the warmer
right
weather.
So we could all get watermelon because we could live on that. Well, this has been wonderful. We look forward to having you come back in the fall. I don't have the exact date, but it's like end of October. You're going to be doing some recipes. We're going to be doing, like, I think 12 days of raw again, all raw food demonstrations, and you're one of the chefs, so you'll be making some of the recipes from this book, and maybe you'll include one of the dressings you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, Karen, and good luck with the book. I've posted it several times in the chat as well as in the show notes. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef